Welcome back to Chapter 11. In this video, we're talking specifically about web fonts. When you're using web fonts, prior to HTML5 and CSS3, using non-standard fonts was next to impossible. You were actually limited to a handful of others such as Arial, Impact, Courier New, Times New Roman, and others that are generally listed. However, with tools like Google Fonts, Font Squirrels, and others, using special fonts on web pages is actually quite easy. This is just a good example of Google Fonts on its just basic layout. You can see that the different fonts that are available give you a good example about what you can choose. You can also type in different settings and different letters to see how different items stack up when you're trying to test things out. You can also narrow it down by serif, sans serif, display, handwriting, and monospace fonts. We'll actually go through this in a Code With Me example so you can see the different ways to use a specialized font on your own website. Now, when you're using items such as Google Font, you have different ways to import the actual file. First thing, you want to make sure you are using a link tag inside your head element. You must reference the hyperlink reference and the relationship attributes in order to make it work on your actual site. Otherwise, there are other ways to allow for the embedding of different fonts. But if you're going to use the more common aspect, you have to use the link attribute or link tag or link element to reference the actual file of your CSS. So that way you can use the font on your site. If you're using one from the Google API, then chances are your link tag will look something kind of like this, referencing https://fonts.googleapis.com/css?family equals whatever your font name is going to be. Spaces will be represented by plus signs, and different fonts will be separated by the pipe 3, 2, 1 character between the different fonts. However, the copy and paste method sometimes produces HTML validation errors, which in some cases is not exactly the best thing, especially if you're wanting to make different websites work with specialized fonts. So the solution is actually an import value. This means that inside embedded CSS, in this case we're using the style tag, you can actually import the same URL, but by saying @import space URL parentheses and then the URL inside quotations, ending with the closing parentheses and the semicolon. This way it actually allows for the importation of the CSS style sheet, and then once you have this, your HTML validation should work. You can also use local font kits, which means that you can use the font from a local source. For example, if you have a specialized font that you want to load from your own server, you can use this system. Font Squirrel is a great resource to use because it actually allows you to create font files and font kits for font files you want to load that either Google Fonts doesn't have or you may have on your own machine. The way this is set up, it actually allows you to reference the font file on your local machine or the web server that the web page is being loaded on, instead of going out there and trying to fetch it from the Google API. It's a little more complex, a little more confusing to work with, especially if the font files don't load 100%. This is the one downside of using a local font kit versus the Google API, mainly because the Google API is updated on a constant basis, and you may or may not be updating your fonts on a daily basis, if at all. Once we go into the Code With Me videos, you'll see the different ways of using the Google Fonts and the Font Squirrel aspects to embed different fonts on your site. But for now, that's all we'll cover in this video. If you have any questions about this or anything in Chapter 7, please send me an email or hit me up on Twitter, and I'll get back to you with the best possible answer.